Cheers.
All right, here we go. Live pictures of the White House. And today proved the point that all roads to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue run through the state of Pennsylvania. They call it the Keystone State for a reason. It is the keystone to this election. Kamala Harris and her newly minted running mate, as you can see, are still working the crowd there at Temple University in Philadelphia. She introduced him just a few minutes ago.
Tim Walz was the kind of teacher and mentor that every child in America dreams of having, and that every kid deserves. And that's the kind of vice president he will be. And that's the kind of vice president America deserves.
And that's the lean in to the teacher, the coach. Wait for that one about Tim Walz. He was a football coach. He talked about it a lot in his speech. And then he went after the former president, hitting him on his record in office and Donald Trump's legal troubles.
Trump weakens our economy to strengthen his own hand. He mocks our laws. He sows chaos and division. And make no mistake, violent crime was up under Donald Trump. That's not even counting the crimes he committed.
Well, and it was also on display, violent crime was, in Minneapolis, where Walz was governor during the BLM riots. That's already starting to make the rounds from Republicans. And with that, we welcome you to the Ferris Show on television. And first tonight, Kamala Harris picking Tim Walz is her first executive decision. Gives us great insight into how she will govern as president. In short, Harris's first executive decision makes Democratic Twitter happy. Twitter is not real life. It is the most extreme and petty part of life. It is the most extreme and petty part of a political party. Harris also made this headline from the Babylon Bee come true. Democrats worried choosing Jewish vice president may cost them the all-important Death to America vote, referring to the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian side of the Democratic Party. The Babylon Bee, for those of you who do not know, is a right-wing satirical website. But in humor, we found truth. She did not pick Josh Shapiro. Even Van Jones on CNN said Harris caved in to the darker parts of her party.
You also have anti-Semitism that has gotten marbled into this party. You can be for the Palestinians without being an anti-Jewish bigot, but there are some anti-Jewish bigots out there, and there's some disquiet now, and there has to be.
Yeah, that's Van Jones. We hire the president to be our commander-in-chief. That is his most important role. And normally it's a long job interview. Lots of questions, the primary debates, tons of interviews, impromptu gaggles, unscripted moments with voters. All of that is gone. We haven't heard any of that from Kamala Harris. And Harris will not tell us who she is. She hasn't had a meaningful interaction with the media since her coronation 16 days ago. So when given the option to make a decision and tell us what's most important, Harris made the same decision Donald Trump did. She played to the base. Now, J.D. Vance got defined as a man who hates childish women. Walz, well, he is not going to upstage Harris like Josh Shapiro would have. And we saw that on full display tonight. By any measure, electorally, Josh Shapiro helps Kamala Harris and the Democrats win the election more than Tim Walz does. And we're going to get into that a little later in the show. But right now, there's a race to define Tim Walz. And that was so much of his speech tonight. Democrats want you to see a veteran, a former teacher, coach, the faculty advisor to the state's LGBTQ plus club, a father, a hunter, a grandfather, a gun owner. This is basically all the things Walz laid out. He was a congressman from a Republican district for 12 years. Republicans will tell you he is a riot-loving COVID-19 lockdown czar who raised taxes, and a week ago Tim Walz headlined the White Dudes for Harris Zoom call. Take a listen.
Don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness.
Okay. Kamala Harris just picked the man to be one heartbeat away from the presidency. One heartbeat. That's her decision. So maybe that is the real Kamala Harris. After all, she will not sit with anybody for a job interview. Geraldo Rivera kicks us off tonight. NewsNation correspondent at large, Peabody Award-winning journalist. Good to see you, my friend. You know, I got a theory going. Yeah, that Walz is also very good at something that Kamala Harris is not, and we saw it as he ad-libbed off-prompter there. He's great off-prompter. He's willing to mix it up on cable news. He's willing to get in to the war zone. And that part of the decision to pick him is, hey, this is a guy we can put out there who just on screen is better than Kamala Harris is, can do the folksy thing. He had some of those lines, we can sleep when we're dead, almost like he was talking in a locker room to a football team, that works on cable news in a way that she can't.
Well, I think you're right. Until about a half hour ago, I had never, to my conscious memory, seen him or heard him speak. He looked to me when she picked him. I was very disappointed that she was with her dad, even though they're the same age. He seems much older. I was shocked, as you were, that he didn't pick Josh Shapiro, who is nimble, charismatic, sharp. It seemed my wife and I and our friend group across the nation worried that this election was a nod to the pro-Palestinian wing of the Democratic Party. I think that he undid a lot of that misgiving, but clearly in the lead up to tonight, Josh Shapiro, Mark Kelly, even Pritzker, even Bashir seemed to me a better choice than the governor of Minnesota. And I don't remember him particularly distinguishing himself. You mentioned the 2020 George Floyd riots. It seemed, even though he was in the stellar service to the United States and the command sergeant major in the Army Reserve, he didn't call out the National Guard for 24 hours after people wanted him to. But he undid a lot of that worry. I think this was a feisty speech. He did, have a spark of personality there that was that I appreciated. It's still not the visual that I would have liked. I'm sorry he didn't pick Josh Shapiro. I worry that it's like Jackie Mason and Mel Brooks, that Shapiro was too Jewish. But I think that this will be that Palestinian Jewish thing will be an issue for Democrats going forward, to me, Leland.
A couple of things. I'm just still basking in the fact that you said you think I'm right, because that rarely, if ever, happens. So I'm just sitting there. This is what he said about the BLM riots when Minneapolis burned to the ground. Walz's past comments on BLM. Take a listen.
A society that does not put equity and inclusion at the center of it is certainly going to eventually come to the places where we're at.
Among other things, he, as governor, instituted a COVID snitch line so that people could call and report their neighbors and people who went to church and did other things that were not consistent with his lockdown. He celebrated being a sanctuary state, and in fact, we heard him talk about that today and a number of the things he did. Just because you're from the Midwest, as am I, that does not make you a Midwesterner in terms of values. You live in Ohio now, not far from Western Pennsylvania, which is where this election could be decided. When somebody says socialism is neighborliness, that doesn't work well with working men and women.
It doesn't, and it's weird to use his phrase, weird, and I don't think he would have been picked if that word didn't become, when he said weird, J.D. Vance and Trump are weird. If that didn't go viral, I don't think he would have been the pick for the Democrats. That lefty stuff doesn't play anymore, it just seems to me, unless you're Ilhan Omar or Rashida Tlaib. and you want Israel to lose the Gaza war, you don't want to go playing around with that. You listing right now issues that I think are important that people remember. That he did free school meals, reproductive rights, legal pot. He's done some things that sit well with me. Anyway, Leland.
No, it's certainly there's a lot of those things that do sit well with the middle of America, the sort of the common sense stuff. And then you've got a list of the common sense stuff that he talked about, and you've got a laundry list that the Republicans are already putting out. The attack ads are starting to get made. I think there was a sense of relief among Republicans I talked to today that he didn't pick Josh Shapiro. We got a whole segment on that. I could talk to you all night. One thing that I think was interesting, and you and I both have covering politics, you learn to pick up on a word and then go, why are they using that word? I heard him talk about Kamala Harris and the sense of joy, I think 4 or 5 or 6 times. And where are they going with the word joy?
I'm not sure. It reminds me of the happy campaigner, Jimmy Carter and others. I don't know, but I have to say this about Kamala Harris so far. She has been impeccable in the campaign so far. This race, she has not aired. She has, maybe by not giving any interviews, that has been the reason that you haven't heard the discordant notes. But she seems to me much better than the stereotype I had of her. Maybe he will win
she's on the teleprompter
also as time goes by.
She's on the teleprompter. She's much better at the teleprompter. I'm going to give you the last word here, and you see if we can end on agreeing with me. She underpaid. And by that I mean, in her first executive decision, the chance she had was to stand up. And by the way, so did Donald Trump. She could have stood up to the extremes of her party, the worst parts of her party, and said, I'm going with Josh Shapiro, to make the point of I'm picking a moderate, I'm picking a centrist. But she didn't want to aggrieve the base in any way. And it shows, in the same way it showed about Donald Trump, so fair is fair, a real lack of opportunity to have leadership.
I agree again. We have to mark this show down in history. That's 2 agreements in the first 5 minutes. Josh Shapiro was clearly the historic choice. He was, the handwriting was on the wall. This was the guy. This was the ass kicker. He was, going to be a perfect, if you want diversity, equity, and inclusion, that twosome.
That's the guy.
Kamala Harris and Josh Shapiro would have been historic. I think Governor Walz will be fine. I don't know if he could stand toe-to-toe the way Shapiro could have against J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is easy to underestimate. So I think, well, now we know the players. Now the race is on, Leland.
Yeah. I'll put it this way. I'm marking down one word in our conversation. Fine. Not exactly a ringing endorsement. I'm about to be married. You are married. We both know what that word means in relationships.
Congratulations. You don't want it in your
I'll
wife.
Talk to you soon. Not fine is not a good word.
I feel fine
See
right
you soon,
now.
my friend.
I feel fine. Okay, thanks.
Kamala Harris made her decision today. So Donald Trump announces he'll sit down with Elon Musk, Mr. Electric Car. Why that will not play in Peoria. And when Donald Trump chose former venture capitalist J.D. Vance, he wanted a man who could speak to the Midwest. Can the coach, I think that's what we're going to start calling Tim Walz now, can the coach steal the voters?
I think we're going to go do the slingshot.
Which I don't know what it is, and they're keeping it from me. But then we're going to go get some food. Corn dog?
I'm vegetarian.
Turkey then? And
Turkey's meat.
Not in Minnesota, turkey special.
Well, I have pictures of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Kamala Harris just introduced her running mate, Governor of Minnesota Tim Walz. First campaign event together in the swing state. They will start voting by mail there on September 16th. So let's think about the calendar. The past 2 weeks were the Kamala Harris rebrand and launch. It worked. It's incredible what has happened with the help of the media and a candidate who's quite disciplined. This week, she and Tim Walz crisscrossed the state. Then comes the DNC, where Democrats get their own 4-day infomercial. It will not be all about the successes of the Biden administration. We realize that after hearing now Kamala Harris's stump speech. Didn't mention Joe Biden's name once. America checks out for the week before Labor Day. Maybe there's a debate in September, and we're already having people cast ballots. My point here is that Donald Trump has precious, precious little time for a reset, and he needs one. Host of the Eric Erickson Show joins us now, author of the book, You Shall Be As Gods. Good to see you, my friend. Thank you. Does this pick, does the moment now offer Donald Trump a window, A, and B, does sitting down for an interview with Elon Musk on Monday how you take advantage of that window?
Yes, it allows him a window to reboot, including after the attacks on Republicans in Georgia and Atlanta. You now have Republicans excited. I can't tell you the number of text messages and emails I've gotten from people and phone calls, just so excited and relieved she didn't pick Josh Shapiro. Sitting down with Elon Musk does nothing. I mean, Ron DeSantis did that and Twitter crashed. So that was how he launched his campaign. This isn't a good sign to sit down with Elon Musk as opposed to barnstorming the nation, doing events in states. I mean, you know, as a former campaign strategist, I know you do live events in states, you tend to boost your turnout there. Sitting down with Elon Musk on a flaky platform doesn't.
Well, sitting down with Elon Musk on a Monday, your event on Friday as Donald Trump, after he did a podcast on Monday, there was some guy who gave him a Tesla. Monday, he has this Elon Musk. Friday, he's in Montana, not exactly a swing state, that you're there. Bret Baier of Fox News had this to say about Tim Walz. Take a listen.
They like how he talks. They like how he addresses media interviews. He's been on our shows. He's not afraid to get, like J.D. Vance, he's not afraid to go to different places. He's not afraid to mix it up. He does speak in plain speak. He's a former football coach, former teacher. He has that appeal, that affect.
After the J.D. Vance pick, we were told over and over by Trump loyalists, you don't understand. Vance is the guy who can speak to middle America. He can speak to Appalachia. He can speak to the white working class man. Whether you believe that or not depends, and the polling is certainly mixed on that. But now does picking Tim Walz even further sort of solidify how folly and what a missed opportunity the J.D. Vance pick was?
Yeah, I think they're both missed opportunities, and I like Vance, but he doesn't actually add anything to the ticket. Same with Walz. You could have gotten Shapiro and taken 18 electoral college votes off the table that you absolutely need to win, that Donald Trump doesn't necessarily need to win. Both parties seem to be playing to their bases as opposed to trying to expand. I mean, the way I always ran political campaigns was addition, not subtraction. And both campaigns now are like, let's subtract from the people we could get. Maybe they'll stay home.
Right. So, yeah, Josh Shapiro is a little bit like a Nikki Haley pick would have been for Donald Trump. We're doing the math and going through everything in the next segment. But you think about Trump's calendar: Monday podcast interview, Tuesday empty, Wednesday empty, Thursday empty, Friday Bozeman, Montana rally, and then sitting down with Elon Musk. That's it.
And he's sending J.D. Vance out.
Right. You're sending J.D. Vance out, but people don't wait an hour for hours in lines to see J.D. Vance. They want to see Donald Trump. So I guess, do you understand what's going on?
No, I honestly, I don't understand why you go to Atlanta, Georgia on Saturday and attack the most popular Republican in the state who's endorsed you. I don't understand why you sit down with Elon Musk. I don't understand why they trotted out J.D. Vance. Kamala Harris was the pick, and they sat on their hands for multiple weeks and didn't try to define her when there's so much to define her with. They seem to be rushing now to try to define Walz, but he's not the actual person people are really voting for. Kamala Harris is ahead of him. I've got no idea other than, do they have the money to do it, or is it all going to lawyers? I don't know. And by the way, his team is really good. Susie Wiles and Chris Schlesinger are good people who know how to do this, but Donald Trump's the guy who calls the shots, and he's not calling what I think are the shots that you need to do to win.
Yeah, I think we can all agree it is perplexing where do you see the opportunity now? If this is an opportunity for a reset, what does Trump and Vance have to do to take advantage of it?
The Democrats are kind of discarding their Trump as a threat to democracy rhetoric, which they had, and many of them
it's about freedom.
Yeah, they don't necessarily believe it anyway. He's got an opportunity to say that Harris and Walz are actually too far left. Look at what happened in Minneapolis. Look at Tim Walz's rhetoric. You've already got Republicans on social media referring to him as Tampon Tim because he put tampons in boys' bathrooms. Culturally out of line with conservative Americans, blue-collar, working-class Americans. They've got the opportunity if they can actually execute. And given the last several weeks, I'm not sure they can, but they've got a moment because Republicans are way more unified today than they have been for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I guess they may not be as dejected, I think is sort of what you're saying.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And
right.
if they can focus, they've got a message. They clearly have a message. They're just not conveying it.
Yeah, it's fascinating how quickly Harris has been able to rebrand and distance herself from Joe Biden, in part because you're not hearing anything, as you point out, from Donald Trump other than attacking Brian Kemp, which was perplexing, as you pointed out so well.
States, that matters, and the Trump campaign's got to step up their ad buys.
All right. Good luck this week. Eric's got a huge week with The Gathering. You can read about it on Show Notes, which I think is the best newsletter in the conservative world, at least. I subscribe. You should as well. It's good to see you, my friend.
You too. Take care.
Yeah, the rollout is over for both sides. There's Tim Walz. Now the work must begin. There are 90 days to reverse years of crumbling support for Democrats under Joe Biden. A look at the counties in America that will decide everything.
Today to proudly announce I am now officially the Democratic nominee for President of the United States.
Both Kamala Harris and J.D. Vance agree. The race to the White House runs through Pennsylvania. There is a reason Kamala Harris had her big rally in Philadelphia today. They made that Pennsylvania is the keystone clear. Both of them. J.D. Vance, Kamala Harris agreeing on something, you know it's true. Our Decision Desk average of polls shows Trump led Joe Biden by 4 percentage points, with Harris at the top of the ticket. His lead is now just 1 and trending in the wrong direction. Scott Tranter here, Director of Data Science for our partners at Decision Desk HQ. The big Mo is not going in Donald Trump's direction. DDS HQ presidential forecast, obviously 270 to win, is up on the screen. If she wins Pennsylvania, she can lose Nevada, Arizona, and still become president. If you lose Pennsylvania, pass for Democratic victory, all but close. Why is that? Is it just a math problem?
It's just a simple math problem and a little bit about regionalization and polarization of how this goes. Our forecast model, when we relaunch it, I think it'll be the same, but when it closed down, whichever candidate won Pennsylvania had an 85% chance of winning the presidency. Just because Pennsylvania represents Wisconsin, Michigan, those states tend to vote together. And so that's kind of how it all looks.
And there's also, you think about sort of all these different segments of demographics in Pennsylvania. You've got Western Pennsylvania, coal workers, Appalachia. You've got Central Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh. And you think about sort of a wealthier tech center class there and wealthy suburbs. And then you've got the real city of Philadelphia. Pennsylvania 2020 result, Joe Biden wins by 1.2 points, less than 100,000 votes, and obviously rural Pennsylvania went to Donald Trump. You wanted to focus on Philly 2020, Pennsylvania County. Biden wins by almost, 62 points, 63 points. And then you went to the demographics there, median age 34.8, bachelor's degree, median income 77,000, Philadelphia turnout, Philadelphia County. In 2016, it was 63% versus 65% in 2020. What does that tell us?
Well, I think what it tells us is Philadelphia, if the Democrats want to use it as a turnout machine to get a lot of votes out, that's where they are, especially.
So that's why they were there today.
That's why they were there today. And look, Philadelphia is a heavily African-American population. and Donald Trump is winning 10 to 15% of African Americans, depending on which poll you're looking at. Barack Obama, when he won Philadelphia in 2008, he won 85, 90% of the African American vote and had record turnout. So that's kind of where Kamala Harris needs to look at if she wants to pull out Pennsylvania.
All right, so we're back there looking at the demographics. We don't have the race demographics available. So turnout in Philadelphia County, 65%, 63%, 66%. Do we have any polling yet to see conclusively if Donald Trump is still overperforming with African Americans in a place like Philadelphia?
Short answer is not specifically Philadelphia, but all over, yes. There has been numerous national head-to-head
But that was running
polls.
against Joe Biden.
That was running against Joe Biden. So we'll see what it looks like with VP Harris at the top of the ticket. But the polling, as soon as when Joe Biden dropped out, he was winning 15% of the African-American vote, which would be a high watermark for any Republican candidate.
So we bring down some of the graphics and stuff from our first segment about this pick of Tim Walz. You've been on record over and over and over again saying VP picks don't matter, VP picks don't matter. Does Tim Walz appeal, though, to or some Trump-adjacent voters in Western Pennsylvania?
I mean, they're certainly going to make a try at it, right? They're going to truck him out to Western Pennsylvania tomorrow. That's kind of where he grew up. I'm from Minnesota myself. I mean, Tim Walz is a cutout of Minnesota and the upper Midwest. So we'll see how he performs out there. That's what they're using it for. But that's not necessarily the segment, that I think Kamala Harris should be worried about in Pennsylvania. It's more the African-American turnout in Philadelphia.
When you think about Tim Walz, though, and there's the videos of him riding with his kid at the state fair and talking about how Turkey is vegan.
There's nothing more American than some of those pictures. Yeah.
And you got that, and you got him in his Carhartt jacket introducing people and being Mr. I'm the coach of the football team, and I'm going to talk to you like the coach. Okay, fine. All well and good. That said, his positions, when you look back at what he did during COVID, at how he treated the BLM riots, how he's looked at a lot of the cultural issues, and even some of the fiscal issues we all talk about, he is extraordinarily progressive. The types of voters that he's trying to bring to the ticket, right? White, working class, rural, ex-urban voters. Do they vote because the guy has good videos and is a hunter, or do they vote on the issue set and the cultural issues?
They tend to vote mostly on the cultural issues, but I think it was a smart pick. I mean, look, he has an NRA A+ rating. There's not a lot of Democrats who have that. So every time you bring up some of the BLM protester stuff, which he's gotten some heat for in Minneapolis, in his home state, they're going to remind them that, no, he's one of you too. He's a hunter. He understands the outdoors. He understands some of your issues. So it's going to be a battle for that. It's not as clear cut as if they had picked maybe a Mark Kelly or something like that.
Boy, and you think about that map that they didn't pick Josh Shapiro.
Yeah, math says you pick Josh Shapiro. Look, if this were all done on a calculator, it's pretty easy to me. But you know what? That's why it's politics, right?
All right, buddy. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. We now know how vocal the pro-Hamas wing of the Democratic Party can be. That is why, at least one of the reasons, Kamala Harris did not pick Josh Shapiro. That very Democratic group, they're the ones who are burning American flags, chanting death to the Jews outside the White House and Capitol. They're the most vocal part of the Democratic Party right now. And that's why Josh Shapiro did not get picked to be the first Jewish vice president. We don't know how big that movement is. We might find out in Chicago if they come out to protest. But my hometown of St. Louis will give us a sense of things tonight. Really, how big is the pro-Hamas movement? Hamas apologist and Democratic Congresswoman Cori Bush faces a pro-Israel, moderately progressive, and very well-funded primary challenger tonight. He's named Wesley Bell. The same groups behind ousting Hamas enthusiast and Tim Walz mega supporter Jamal Bowman, they want to get rid of Bush as well. The Jews living in Bush's district, 1st Congressional District of Missouri, full disclosure, they are my relatives, many are. They face a relatively easy choice in tonight's election because both candidates are liberal. It's a Democratic primary. American Jews, more broadly, will face a far tougher decision this fall between choosing to be liberal or choosing to be Jewish in the presidential race. Josh Shapiro seemed to try to put all of those issues to bed. Could he do it, or did he steal the show with his white-soled sneakers?
If I hear you right, and I think I do, you're chanting, he's a weirdo. And I lean on my faith, which calls me to serve. And I am proud of my faith.
Josh Shapiro, very popular governor of Pennsylvania, the must-win state for Democrats. He's Jewish. It would electrify the Jewish community to elect the first Jewish vice president. Phenomenal speaker, as we all saw. Maybe even the star of tonight. He's the one who introduced Kamala Harris, the warm-up act. But he didn't get picked to be vice president. Former White House pollster Bill Clinton and president of the Stage Well Group, Mark Penn, is with us now. Good to see you. We know basically why this happened, right? Take the spin away. You give this to Tim Walz because you don't want to anger the far left of the Democratic Party that did not like Josh Shapiro. They had the genocide Josh thing and everything else. And you hope that Walz works really hard to help you win Pennsylvania. Because then he gets to be Secretary of State or whatever it is that he wants to go off and do, be an ambassador, Secretary to the ambassador to the UN, something like that. Okay, is that easy? Did placating the far left of the Democratic Party do enough to outweigh the loss of enthusiasm and maybe even the anger of Jewish Americans who are predominantly Democrat?
Look, this was a disappointing decision. I wrote an op-ed in the Times. Look, Shapiro was an ideal candidate. He gets you Pennsylvania, probably. He had breaks with the Democratic left on a number of issues, so he really put down a marker that this is a campaign that Nikki Haley voters could vote for, that soft Democrats could vote for, that moderates could vote for. And instead, Bernie Sanders' choice got chosen. Now, I can't speculate why or how she made the decision because I don't know. But I can say that it really, Jewish voters are concerned. The Mideast is on the brink of war, as your breaking news says. And I think they would have felt more reassured if Shapiro, the logical choice, had been picked to be vice president. And this is a puzzling choice, although in fairness, both campaigns, both Trump's campaign and Harris's campaign now doubled down on the base in their vice presidential picks and did not go for the center.
Yeah, it's perplexing. I think you make a great point because we know why Trump didn't pick Nikki Haley, right? Because of his ego. It's obvious that was the pick. Why Kamala Harris didn't pick Josh Shapiro is more perplexing, especially when you listen to what Democrats say the stake is, right? The country, the republic is at stake. But we're not going to pick the guy who is the obvious one to help us win. It shows you that there is something else happening. Are we going to see Jewish Americans break significantly with the Democratic Party this time around?
Well, I don't think you're going to see them protesting outside the convention. I think they're silent protesters, and I think recent polls show Jewish voters. Look, Jews are 2%. Muslims are 1% of the country, but the left is, let's say when I ask in my polls, do you support Israel or Hamas? It's 80-20. Support Israel, 20 support Hamas. So 20%, those are almost all Democrats. So I suppose it's a fair number within the Democratic Party, but it's not a majority. And so she went against the majority of the Democratic Party here. And I think that Jews are going to be watching very closely over these next few days when Israel is under maximum pressure and the Biden-Harris administration is going to be called upon to defend Israel against Iran.
Yeah, we don't have the sound bites loaded, but both Kamala Harris and Tim Walz began their speeches fawning over Josh Shapiro, and you could tell it was in the teleprompter when they did it. I also thought, though, that there may be another reason, to be fair to Kamala Harris, why she didn't pick him, is because when we watched Josh Shapiro speak and heard him, he was the star of the night, not being picked. If Harris loses, not being picked is probably the best thing that ever happened to Josh Shapiro.
It may well end up that way, but it would have been good for her to pick somebody who was articulate, who was tough, who was a leader, showing that she wanted to really have the best of the best as part of her administration and as a vice presidential candidate. I look, on so many levels, I think this was a bad choice. But like I said, I think Trump made a bad choice too, right? He didn't pick Rubio or Tim Scott, but I think Rubio was really the logical choice for him. And I think Shapiro was the logical choice. And both of those choices would have made history. And neither candidate decided to make history with those choices.
Well, you know what's interesting, Mark, is that I got two agreements from Geraldo at the top of the show. And now we got you on board as well, because we all said exactly the same thing. But both of them, both people who want to be president of the United States and make the hard choices and are talking about their ability to show leadership and moral courage, meaning both Trump and Harris in their vice presidential picks, showed absolutely none.
Well, maybe we're not even going to see a debate amongst these two. And maybe Harris isn't even going to sit down for an interview with you. Right?
I don't think she's going to sit down for an interview with anybody. Look, I mean, she's doing great on the prompter. She is. If you're them and the rest of the media is not up in arms over day 16 with no interviews and where are the policy papers and on and on and on, why would you? If you were advising a candidate, you wouldn't tell him to sit down at this point, would you?
Well, it's kind of incredible because when I was doing campaigns, which was a while ago, my God, if we didn't go out to the press at least every other day, the gaggle would go nuts that we were holding them off, that they were going to sink us. And I've never seen anything like this where they let an unknown presidential candidate who didn't even go through a primary not sit down with opening interviews and face all the questions about what she really believes and what's the difference between her past statements and the press. I mean, it's really incredible.
Mark, I will say to you what the crowd said to Josh Shapiro. Preach. We got to run, but we're looking forward to having you in studio, all right?
Thank you.
Good to see you. Thank you. You know, there's that old line, you say it best when you say nothing at all. What Tim Walz wanted to say to Kamala Harris, but could not. Vice President Harris, her new VP pick, Tim Walz, walking out for the first time earlier in Philadelphia. They are quite excited. Guess anybody would be. It's not so much what Kamala Harris said. It's like, take a look at how Tim Walz was acting. His body language, Patty Wood, body language expert, analyzed presidential candidates for decades, is with us. There's a sense I got almost that he seemed a little bit more comfortable than she did.
They have a different energetic level. He is very warm, almost Santa, ho-ho-ho-like in his body language and demeanor. So that softness is, I think, you're seeing in contrast to her. She was very high energy. She was incredibly happy. So that was...
Is it genuine?
Here's what I noticed. When she was talking about him, her voice slowed down and it got what in paralanguage it's called fullness, which actually speaks to, indicates genuine, true emotional state. So I do think she really likes him. Also, when they came out, did you notice they came out very close together and stayed close together? Yeah. And they did some matching body language, the raised hand, the hand to heart. He was a beat behind, which actually showed his deference to her power, which I actually liked. But he was really comfortable on stage behind her, giving.
Yeah, no, he seemed that way. It's kind of just flowed with the whole thing. Maybe I'm. I don't want to say biased, but maybe we're sort of looking always for the next best thing. Right. Josh Shapiro on stage, maybe the guy who stole the show. Take a listen.
Now, so if if I hear you right, and I think I do, you're chanting, he's a weirdo.
Some have said one of the reasons that Kamala Harris didn't pick him is because she didn't want to be upstaged. It's hard to watch that clip, and not sort of just feel the confidence radiating off of him.
It was an electrifying speech. He did a terrific job, very high energy, very powerful, had that Obama-like cadence, like a reverend behind the pulpit. And he gave 110% in that speech. He knew this was his chance. This is going to be a memorable speech. People are going to pull clips from this. He had an undercurrent of anger in his voice. You could hear a little bit of that vocal fry, especially when he delivered the line, I'm proud of my religion or proud of my faith. Boy, that statement, he hit that strong.
Yeah, a lot of people have been quite vocal, some would say, in terms of how he's handled his faith, and those who have attacked his faith. So you can understand the emotion there. Real quick, J.D. Vance, admonition to the media. Take a listen.
She ought to answer for the fact that groceries are unaffordable and housing is unaffordable because of her policies. So to the media, please, for the love of God, do a better job. The American people demand it. Thank you all for being here. God bless you guys.
He rushed to close. It was not powerfully done. In speaking, you have what's called the recency effect, the very last thing you say or do. He didn't pause at the end of his speech. He went quickly to the thank you. Something's going on. He's feeling the strain. I could see it non-verbally.
All right. Well, we are not going to rush our close. We've got 20 seconds. We are going to take all of them. And with that, I thank you. We learn a lot from you every time we see you. Patty Wood, thank you very much. A lot to break down in the show tomorrow, including the chant, "We won't go back." He's comparing Kamala Harris and Trump's record, what they want. Here's Chris.